Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Thanks But No One Asked You podcast, where storytelling meets unsolicited advice. Today, I have a guest, Jonathan Santos Silva. He is the founder of the Liber Institute. I'm saying that correctly.
Liber. It's okay. It's okay.
It's all right. We're going with it. The Liber Institute.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to introduce him. I'm going to let you introduce yourself so that you can share with the world what you want them to know about you.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me, Britt. My name, like she said, is Jonathan Santos Silva. I'm the founder of the Liber Institute, which is an organization that I founded to embolden and equip Indigenous young people, families, and educators to transform their schools and the communities around them. And in the time since I founded it, I've broadened out to embrace a more of a rural identity because I've learned over the years that there is so much that we don't know or we don't think about rural communities when we are urban based, like I was.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so much that unites different rural communities, from different cultures, right? Like there's genius and brilliance, creativity, strong leadership and deep connections. And there's also just certain resources that communities don't have that they ought to have. And so it has become my life's work to support rural school and systems leaders to like build the schools that they dream of for their kids.
That's
In addition
amazing.
yeah, thank you. In addition to that, just because before we came on air, you asked me what my day was like. I'm also a husband and a
Crazy.
father of four that are 12, 10, soon to be 8 and 6. So if I'm not going in one direction for soccer, I'm going in the other direction for dance or something else. So those are four, and including my wife, five of the things that motivate and inspire me to do this work and do it well. On top of that is just like wanting to make them proud and wanting to be their biggest fan. So
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right in. We got to start off with hot seat questions, and this one just came off the top of the head actually when you told me about your day. And so I am a founder of my business as well. I don't have kids, so every time I'm like, "Oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that." I'm like, "Girl, there's somebody with some kids right now doing what you are doing." So I need to know. Be honest. Do you secretly judge people who complain to you who don't have kids?
I wouldn't say I judge them because I know that probably before I had kids, I thought I was busy too. It's my mom. My mom. I remember one time she told me about how when my sister. So I'm a big blended family. We are, and so there are seven of us. My dad has three, my mom has one, and then they have three
Mhm.
three more together, right? So, but my mom's oldest daughter was 7 years older than me. So when I was coming, she said she was terrified. She was like, "How am I gonna love this other child the way I love my own?" Also, she's trying to love my dad's kids, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, "What's the capacity?" And she said, "Once you came out, it was like, oh, like what did I ever fear? Like, you know what I mean?" And so
Wow.
she really learned the ability to like how like love would multiply. And I think it kind of is also true for like, there are things that I could not imagine when it was just me and my wife. How will we ever do this?
Yeah.
And as each child comes, each child's a blessing. And so your capacity shifts. I wouldn't say necessarily that I'm better at, compartmentalizing and getting things done as someone who doesn't have kids. I just have learned to do things differently. So I
Yeah.
don't judge. I just, recognize that each journey is challenging. I have a good, really good friend, and he and his wife have one child. And sometimes I'm like, yo, bro, it's harder with one than it is with four. Cause at least with four, I could be like, for certain things, it's more expensive, of course, if you had to pay for
Yeah.
four soccer teams or four kids to go to dance. But I can always be like, hey, go talk to your sister or holler at your brother. You know what I mean?
Just
Like
delegate.
you
You
all
can
can
delegate.
entertain yourselves, entertain each other. Whereas he gotta, it's like, mom, dad, like, his daughter doesn't have a built-in playmate. So in some
Right.
ways, once you get once they're like now they're all, potty trained, they're all talking, they can all communicate effectively like what they need. It starts to get a little easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier than if, some folks I know they have multiples and it's like bam, bam, bam. And now you got triplets and three sets of diapers and three, your mom is pumping all
Yeah.
day long to get kids milk and that would be way harder than what I have. So I guess it's all a matter of perspective.
It's relative. It is.
Yeah.
It is. But I will say I do have this like invisible single mom behind me somewhere starting a business. And I'm like, girl, Brit, lock in. Okay. It's no reason. You have a dog. Okay. All right, that's good to
Dogs
know.
need love too, though. Dogs need love. We had 2 for a long time. We had 2 awesome dogs. They got old and, passed on, but they need love too, man. I tell you this, like, before we had kids, yeah, we had 2 of the most spoiled dogs ever, and then they became older siblings, and it was like, man, these damn, babies came along and took my spot, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's different now they have to adjust.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, that's really dope. That's awesome for you guys. I love that. So
Thank you.
you've talked about kind of being in these rural places, and so I'm assuming your work takes place in what we like to call the flyover states.
Mhm.
But there are some gems, and I be
Yeah.
trying to tell people about Columbus, Ohio, and people are like, "No, no, it's Ohio." I'm like, "Go to Columbus. It's nice. It's better than a lot of these other cities." So what is a, underrated city or state that you're like, "Listen, y'all, I know what we already think, but I need y'all to come visit this place." What would you say?
So first of all, I have not been to Columbus, but shout out to Columbus because unless I'm mistaken, Columbus birthed one of my favorite coaches, Dr. Erica Jordan Thomas. I believe she's a
Mm,
Columbus native. So shout out to Columbus. Got to get there. Um, this is going to be probably a surprising answer to folks who don't know me, but those who know me be like, yeah, yeah, we heard this. Quote unquote flyover state that I think is so underrated and I love is South Dakota.
I figured you was gonna say this.
Yes. So I taught in South Dakota
Yeah.
on the Pine Ridge Reservation. We moved back to South Dakota with our kids. We had our 4th child and is a South Dakotan, by birth. South Dakota its nickname is the land of infinite diversity. And I gotta be
Wow.
honest, that does not apply to the people
Okay,
because
okay.
it's largely, white. The largest group of people of culture is Native Americans, but it does have a growing population of, Latinos, especially in the cities. They're coming for different jobs, and then we also have a lot of, a growing number of Black servicemen and
Okay.
women who come out because there are some military bases and they stay.
Ah, okay.
What the land of infinite diversity applies to is like if you start on the east side of the state in like Sioux Falls, you're on the plains, right? So the breadbasket, those images you get like in
Yeah.
amber waves of grain and all that, that is eastern South Dakota. That's East River, as they call it, the Missouri River, kind of bisects the state. Then as you get to the middle, where Pierre is like the capital city, I think it's the second or third smallest capital city in the country. It's like in the teen thousands. Not even,
Okay.
20,000, 50. It's the first place I ever went to where I went to Walmart. And I remember I went to Walmart because we had some event going on and we were out in Pier. And I went to the video game section and I reached into the cabinet, pulled out a game. And then I went, you know what I mean? Because the inner Black person in me was like, they're going to think I'm stealing. And then I put it back in and I'm like, who left this open? And then I looked down the row and the whole row was unlocked. And I'm just like, oh, they just leave the
They
video
just
games
trust
unlocked. Yeah, help
people.
yourself. Take it to the front. Like I had never, ever, anywhere, majority white, diverse, anywhere. Doesn't matter. I've never been anywhere else where the video games were unlocked. And I was like, what's different, So Pier is
Yeah.
like, it's like right on the river. There's like, and if you go to like, is it called Chamberlain, which is on the river as well, there's like, yeah, like not a marina because it's not actually the ocean, but like
Yeah.
boats and like little waterside resorts. And then you
Oh,
continue further west. So West River, west side is the best side, even in South Dakota. And
okay. I live on the
so
west side of Atlanta.
you
Ew.
know, so west side, West River is where the Badlands are. I mean,
Okay, I've heard
if
of the
you look up the
Badlands.
Badlands, it looks like a moonscape. My wife and I, when we first moved to South Dakota, before we had kids, we would drive to Rapid City, from Pine Ridge to
Mm,
Rapid City every weekend. And that night you're coming back and it looked like you were driving on the moon, right? Like with all the steps and then
wow.
the light coming down. It just looked so cool. And that's a beautiful, you kind of like unique ecosystem for the world. It's like, into like North Dakota, it's South Dakota, and I think uh, into Wyoming, or no, excuse me, not Wyoming, Nebraska. But it's
Okay.
like, it's not really many places on earth that kind of look like that. And then you
Yeah.
continue further west and you have the Black Hills, which are sacred to the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. I was in Montana, which is another state that is really beautiful and that people
I
love.
hear about Montana.
Yeah, and a Montanan was like, I love the Black Hills. If I could live anywhere in America, I'd live in the Black Hills. So like
Wow.
it's really beautiful. And so there are lakes up there. Um, there are lakes, throughout South Dakota, but also not as many as in Minnesota, but like you got lakes, you got the Black Hills, which are like small mountains, you know what I'm saying? The Badlands. It's just so much to do. I mean, if you are a hiker, If you I think you can ski up there. I'm not really a skier, but I think you can ski in the Black Hills. There's also,
Yeah.
like, if you're a hunter, right, like the pheasants and, whatever thing that you're into, there's a lot of it going on in South Dakota. So I would say that is that's my favorite, personal favorite flyover state because it's like it's tied to, family, both
Yeah.
my own children, one of them born there, and most of, all of them grew up there a little bit, but also like chosen family, folks who have adopted me and stuff. So this is a beautiful place. And I would say if you like the winter, you definitely go in the winter. It's beautiful, but the best season is the summertime. It is like
Okay.
80s, like it could get hot, 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 but for the most part, it's like 80s, 90s, sometimes touch 100, but it's really dry. It's not humid like on the East Coast.
Okay, that helps. The
It
humidity
is
is crazy.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. And sometimes maybe politically at times there may be people that you won't strongly agree with, but in general, I feel like you meet a lot of friendly people, and it's a great place to bring your kids or to bring a special person that you want to go and explore with over the summer. I highly recommend it, and it's a great place
Okay.
for RVers too. I'm not an RVer. I would think I would probably smash every car behind me as I'm trying to switch lanes. But like if you're an RVer also, so yeah, there's a lot going on.
Wow, okay, so I'm sold, and I was already thinking like, "When can I go to South Dakota?"
Wait, you're a baller too, right?
Yes.
So if you were to go in December, there's also the Lakota Nation Invitational, which is it's one of the largest, if not the largest, like tribally ran basketball tournaments, and there's an awesome history to it. So back during the time when the American Indian movement was occupying Wounded Knee, which is a community on the Pine Ridge Reservation,
Yeah.
so I think that's the 70s. There were off-reservation schools that would not play an away game on the res. It was not safe, which, feeds into all kinds of things around, bias and stereotypes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so without those home games, all of the tribal schools, the reservation schools, they wouldn't have enough games in their season to qualify for the state playoffs. So they launched
Wow.
LNI as a way to preload a bunch of games
Imma write this
in
down.
at the beginning of the season. And so they would invite other tribes from, further out to be, and I believe it's Custer, which it's funny because Custer,
General
the
Custer?
general Custer is an enemy, they defeated him, but like the school Custer, I think it was Custer, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe it was Custer, they were one of the only like off-res schools that would come and play with the native schools. And so I believe they have a perpetual spot in the in LNI because they were a friend to the Lakota people during that time. So I
Wow.
think it was Custer. I might be wrong on that. So fact check that part. But the rest of that is the story that I got directly from my elder. So it's a cool thing. And now it's humongous. It's boys and girls basketball is being played. There's the language bowl. So, it's so awesome to see these young kids that are learning their language, and they're competing in the
Hmm,
language bowl, the knowledge bowl. There's archery. There's all different sports now. It's grown so much. And then there's
I
also an
like
education
that.
conference. So like for like that time period in December, like it's before Christmas. So it's like the early part of December. Like you see signs that change into like Lakota language and stuff, and welcoming, the LNI, and it's really cool. I would love to see more of that filter into just like daily life in Rapid City, like
Yeah,
always just having that. But it's really cool that in December, like it turns up.
that's amazing. Okay. You're very passionate about South Dakota. You
Yeah,
sound like
I
me
could
when
work for the tourism industry out there, yo, for real.
listen, I'm sold because when people ask me so Atlanta is my 7th city, in my adulthood, and when people ask me what's my favorite city, I give them like 3. I let them know New York City is a love-hate relationship. I had to get out, but I loved it when I was there, but also,
Okay.
like, was like, "I gotta leave." Um, Seattle was the most beautiful place I've ever lived, and I didn't know that a Seattle existed in the United States. I had always gone to Europe. I didn't know it looked so amazing in that
Mm,
part of the country. So that was a game changer for me, which made me open my mind to, okay, I need to go to these other states that I kind of wrote off because clearly, I don't know what I don't know. And then, but my favorite city is Philly. We won't get into it because people have feelings and opinions about that. But, when I talk about Seattle, I mean, my eyes get this big, and I go, "Okay, and I try to capture them as quickly, and they're like, "No, I'm with you, I'm with you." I'm like, "No, guys, but there's islands, and then if you go to the islands, some of them have school districts, but some of them don't. You should just get a shack there and just wake up and be on the water." And I go a little too hard, I can tell because people start to go, "Okay, I'll think about it." But when I lived there, I actually, I knew I wasn't gonna be there forever. I didn't know how long I would be there, but I was like, "Y'all," any of my friends, it was the pandemic, I was like, "Listen,
Come out, come
you
visit.
gotta come out. When else are you gonna come to Seattle? Come out here." And a few of them did, and they were blown away the same way I was. And what I recognized was, and we can go down a whole rabbit hole, but at the time, it was kinda like, "Man, I think people of color need more of these spaces that are green and open and vast." And not in like a farmland way, but in like a beautiful nature like way. I don't know if I left New York and I went to Nashville for business school, but then when I went to Seattle, everything about my whole like equilibrium came down and it came centered, and I actually realized what I actually valued.
Mm.
And when you're in New York, you're kind of like doing a bunch of stuff. You're just doing, 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 doing. When you're in these cities, you're just doing, doing, doing. And I realized I wasn't sleeping in New York. It's hard to sleep when it's always noise. Um, I hadn't really seen greenery. I love Central Park. I knew I loved spending time in Central Park, but something about being outside near water along beautiful, fir trees that stay green all year round, something about it was just so calming. And people would, join me on work calls. They'd be like, "You seem different." I'm like, "It's different out here. I am a different person in this space. And and also George Floyd stuff was going on. I was like, I think we all need to kind of be in this space. This is such a calming space. And at the same time, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about, how the outdoors at one point for Black people specifically, they would say, "Oh, slaves and Native Americans are savages because they're one with nature," and they demonized the outdoors. And then over time, it became commercialized, and now you got to pay a premium to get access to those spaces. And so it's just interesting how our relationship, people of color's relationship, has shifted away to and from that space and being closer to nature, and I was like, "Nah, I need to be outside. I need to this is what I feel comfortable doing." So,
I agree with you 100%. There's a healing aspect of nature. It's why people, what do they call it, grounding, when they walk around without their shoes, or they
yeah.
meditate outside, or they read outside, because there's something to it. Even historically, our people, that was how we survived. We lived off land. And so
Mhm.
the disconnection from the land for so many of us to be in the quote unquote concrete jungle, how do you ground on concrete? It's very different. So I agree. I think that whether it's to live for a time or to find an escape, I mean, another state that let me say this. This country is beautiful and I can
Yeah.
find some beauty everywhere. I went up to upstate New York. I went all the way up, like Malone, New York. Like I was
Okay.
closer to Montreal than I was to
Okay.
Albany. That's how far up. It's gorgeous. So I
I'm
just feel like
sure.
even if you're in New York City, I don't know, rent a car and go up north. Or you're in in some other city, go west, go south, go east, find the water, find the green. I think
Yeah,
it's important for us. I mean, there's a
it is.
reason that they tell us the stories about our foremothers braiding seeds in their hair when they were
Mm,
kidnapped from Africa,
yep.
because there was this belief that they needed to be able to survive. And so that disconnection, I think it does us a disservice. So it's not to say everybody got to leave the city, but if you are in the city, I think it's important to find those moments when you can reconnect and recharge. It's restorative. It's
Yeah,
for your mental and physical wellness, really.
yeah, and we sound like hippies now, so we're gonna pivot.
Hey, it's all good. Call me that. That's why I live. People don't think there's rural in Rhode Island, even because Rhode Island is so small. But
Yeah.
like I told you before we came on, I walked about a mile on my street, and all I see was cows. Right, and that was intentional for us to move to a greener space. You know what I'm saying? When we knew we were coming back here after living in South Dakota for as long as we had, it's like, I just got to be so. I love Providence. Providence is dope. We got great food. It's a foodie town. All of that. But I need to be somewhere where there's green.
Yeah,
Right, so when I
greenery is
I can go
key.
walk out that door right there, and in my backyard, and there's a little groundhog that lives under my shed. There was a bobcat in my yard the other day. There's a deer
Yeah.
eating something in the back. I need that.
You need it. It's humbling and it reminds you like it's not all about you. And I think we kind of get into this we lack empathy a little bit when we kind of like are just afraid of things. It's like we should be around them. They were here first of all. Like yeah, that and also when I think when you're around something that's bigger than you, it's just very humbling like the trees or being by a mountain or anything or a vast open body of water, you're like, "Wow, I am very insignificant."
I agree
Like, this
with you.
tree has been here for hundreds of years. I will die, and it will still be here. I am, like, insignificant. My problems are not that deep. Like, it's just a whole reset
It
that
is. I agree.
that is, it's masterful, and I agree to your point. I live here in Atlanta, but I will regularly drive up to Chattanooga, or I'll drive north to, there are some vineyards up there, so I may be going to the vineyards, but it's more green up there.
Yeah,
It's mountainous, and it's just a different vibe. So,
it is.
it's funny because my friends, for my birthday, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have dinner or brunch." I was like, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm 40 now, so I'd like to be outside, and I took them up north to the vineyards, and they were like, "Oh my god." They were saying, "Thank you for bringing me here,"
Good.
because they didn't even know they needed, like, a just reset, and it wasn't even about the drinking, it was just like we got to nobody was on their phone, nobody even wanted to be on their phone. It was like, "Oh my god, I needed to just see this and take it in and talk to y'all," and it was amazing. So we're gonna do it again for my other friend's birthday. She didn't ask for it, it's happening.
That's what's up.
But
That's what's
that
up.
brings me into, so I get a sense of what you're passionate about, but sometimes we have guilty pleasures. So what is a show, hobby, or habit that you love that people would never expect?
So again, this is like if you don't know me, you wouldn't expect it, but if you know me, like, yeah, okay, bro, we know. Um, is professional wrestling. I love professional wrestling. I have always loved professional wrestling. If I didn't have you on my laptop, if I had you on my phone, I walk around and show you action figures, a little like
We talk about WWE.
WWE. Like, yes, I love
Okay,
it. I
I'm gonna
love
be
it.
open-minded. I'm sorry.
I'm just telling. I mean, I think when people think, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but when people think of wrestling, they think, I don't know, country bumpkin. You might not have all your teeth. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think that.
I think people do. Like, for real, I think people do. And
I think of John
someone
Cena.
said that to me. Honestly, someone said that to me once. Now WWE is big business everywhere. It's on ESPN. But like maybe 10, 15 years ago, somebody was like, "You like wrestling, but you have all your teeth." Like I was like, "Dang, wow," But
It's
like,
I think it's the way they advertise and where they advertise, because we always had wrestling shows coming to Ohio.
yeah,
And we had monster truck stuff always coming
yeah.
to Ohio. And I was like, "What is this? And why are y'all it like this? This is so weird to me."
That used to be my
Because
Saturday morning.
it's not even real. I don't once I found out it was not real, like, once I realized it was more of a acting and stuff, I said, "Okay, now I really don't understand. What is it?"
Okay. So here's what I say. So first of all, Saturday, not morning, but like the late morning going in the afternoon was whatever it was, WWE main event or WWF, right? Or Saturday, whatever it was. And then there would be the monster truck rally. Grave digger and all that. And
I
so,
actually know what that is.
yeah, so that was I would be down at my grandparents' house or something, downstairs because it was a triple decker, and I was watch the superstars, and then I would watch the monster trucks, and so that was my childhood, a big part of it. What it is for me, it's like, I mean, I think when I explain it this way, maybe it'll make more sense. Like when you watch, um, I don't know if you have like if you're into reality shows, but my wife, it's whether it's Love Is Blind or Bachelor in Paradise and all that stuff, the drama, the interpersonal dynamics, and it's like there's an escapism like that is not her life, right? She's married,
Right.
she has kids, she has a regular daily kind of operation, and this is so far removed. It's like, wow, oh, ooh, there's about to be some drama. There's a little bit of that and the theatrics of wrestling, right? Like
Okay.
like some of the best stories. Number one, there's always this kind of good versus evil, but then there's always
Yeah.
like the personal issue, right? Like you go back in the day. Like I remember when Earthquake squashed Hulk Hogan and he was out and he was in the hospital. And I just remember this scene. It's indelibly like in my brain of like when they like zoomed in on his locker and his crucifix was hanging from the locker, the open locker. And I was like, oh, is Hulk Hogan ever come? So when he comes back, it's like, this is a personal issue. Earthquake took him
My
out. He's going to get
god.
him. You know what I mean? And so, or like even, not to be all about Hogan, because I know some people feel a certain type of way about Hulk Hogan now, but back in the day, it was like,
Yeah.
Macho Man had Miss Elizabeth, and wait a minute, Hogan carried Miss Elizabeth out. Oh, is he trying to slide in them DMs? You know what I mean? Like, so now Macho Man was pissed, and they were gonna have it was a personal issue. You know what I'm saying? And so Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels was a personal issue, and so it's kind of a little bit of reality TV or a little, I mean, even more so, it's even like soap opera. It's like To
Feels
me,
like it's
it's like
giving
the
soap opera.
male version of a soap opera. And think about soap operas. And so here's another guilty thing. Growing up, I watched all the soaps because my grandmother did not speak any English. She understood English, but she did not speak any English. She watched the English soap operas. So I used to watch General Hospital, All My Children. She also watched all the telenovelas. She used to tell my mom how the Spanish ones were better because they were more dramatic. And
So dramatic.
WWF growing up and WWE now, it's a male soap opera. It is it's I mean, here's the thing about soap operas, right? Every day, Monday through Friday, like if it is Christmas in the world, it is Christmas on the soaps. Like if it is Thanksgiving, if it is, Fourth of July, they are go. I mean, at least back in the day, it was boom, 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 boom.
I
It's
was like,
a
the show was on every day somehow.
yeah, every day. I
How
don't know when they could
every day?
record. They were
I
like
could do it.
they were like marathon men and women, and to an extent that was WWE or that was wrestling. Like you go back to Ric Flair days, they talk about wrestling like almost every day of the week and twice on Sunday, right? A matinee and an evening. And so those guys were every day without there's no it's like the circus but with no net. Right, you're doing it live in front of a crowd. You're making the match. You're trying to move the crowd. But there's no second take. Like it's. I know that people. It's not real. Why do you watch it? Well, we know movies aren't real. And so what we get is an opportunity to suspend disbelief and really
Yeah.
think that if Tom Cruise jumps and he doesn't grab the, whatever, the little landing thingy on the helicopter, oh, he's going to die. He's going to die. So you're like, you're leaning forward like, oh, Mission Impossible or, whatever, 007, right? And we know it's not real, but for an hour and a half, we get to suspend our disbelief and really like, I mean, we know Tom Cruise is going to make it to the end, or we know whatever his name, Craig, whatever is going to make it to the end.
Yeah.
But like for a minute, it's like, oh, the bad guy, he might win. WWE is like that, and it's ongoing.
Drama.
It's 52 weeks a year. They never get a day off. I mean, or never get a week off, hardly ever. And these men and women, they are putting their bodies on the line. Like it is super physical. And so to me, it's just like it's the ultimate. Like back in the 90s when I was in high school, Stone Cold Steve Austin would flip off Vince McMahon, stun him, pour beer on him. How many Americans or worldwide folks would want to kick their boss in the stomach and stun him and then walk out and still be able to come to work the next Monday, right? I mean, like there's a universality of like, oh, you're pissing me off right now, or do all year long certain characters driving you nuts, and then on WrestleMania he gets his comeuppance, like the good guys win, right? Like there's just something about it, and I get to watch it with my kids. Like it's like something like I think there's a reason that WWE also translates, or like Lucha Libre for the Mexican, or the Latin audience, why it translates, because like if you drop me in Mexico City and like let's say I could not get Netflix to watch Monday Night Raw,
Yeah.
I could go to the arena and I could follow Lucha Libre. I don't have to. I mean, I do actually do Duolingo. That's another one of my pleasures. But like,
Okay.
I would not have to know a single word to be like, oh, Brit is winning, or Brit is the good guy. She's the technico, right? Like, I mean, I know that term, but like, she's the good guy, right? And the crowd is into her, and she's very athletic and da da da. Like, I don't have to know the language of the country to get it. So I could go. You could drop me in Japan. I could watch New Japan. You could drop me in Germany, and I could watch, one of their fair type shows. You could drop me anywhere, and I can get it. And I think that's the part about like wrestling that I don't have to be into the storyline. I could be cooking, right? And the kids are at the table, and I'm just like, I turn real quick and see what, you know what I mean?
It's
And I could,
crazy.
yeah.
That's
So
not crazy. It's not crazy, but it's crazy to me.
yeah, it's
Because
my
every time I
jam.
see it, I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't. I'm one of those people, I want to try everything. I'm one of those people, like, it's not really FOMO, but it's kind of like, if everybody else likes this and you don't, it could be you. I tried country music and I tried WWE, and I can't. And it's okay. I don't need
I
to.
think it's
So,
okay. You don't have to.
okay.
And I would say, if you're ever in, oh, you know what? One time I would say, allow me and my kids to take you to a live show. And then you could say, you know what? It still ain't for me. Or more likely, I think you might say, oh, okay, it's not for me, but I get it now. I get why they like it.
I
You know what I
like
mean?
when other people really like something.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued when other people are like deep into something. Like I have when working at Microsoft, I had all these friends who they all talk about D&D, and I can tell they talk about Dungeons and Dragons because they say a weird word and they do a little inside joke and they're like, yeah, ha ha. And I'm like, is that a Dungeons and Dragons joke? And they're like, it is. And I'm like, I'm around y'all too much. That's number one. And two, this is weird, but I love that y'all love it. So, like, I'm intrigued. And, I actually dipped in a little bit into anime dealing with these people because they all loved anime so much. And I'm
Yep,
finding
yep.
out some of them are like Comic-Con influencers on the side. I'm like, what is this world? But I'm so curious about other people's, like, when someone's invested in something, I'm like, what is it? Like, well, I want to see what you see. And sometimes I just can't see it. I'm like, "Hey, listen, it is what it is. I'll tag along for the ride, but just know I'm gonna be clowning you 1000% of the time because it makes me laugh, and I can't just sit here and take this seriously."
Yep.
But, I'm
Yeah,
I'm
let
open
let
to
us
it.
take you to a
I'm
show. Let us
open
take you
to it.
to a show one day.
I'm open to it.
Alright,
Okay,
cool.
let's talk about your work. So, I first wanna define Indigenous and make sure that this is actually a definition that you would say. It's a little long, so stay with um, Indigenous peoples are the first peoples of a region, culturally distinct communities who have ancestral ties to the land long before colonization or settlement. They often maintain unique traditions, languages, and identities tied to that history. Would you add anything to that definition?
No, I mean, I don't it's I think it's cool that you defined it because I don't usually try to define it as someone who, is not, under the like, that sort of definition. I'm not indigenous to America. I mean, I was born here, but I'm not indigenous, so I don't try to define it. But I think that's a beautiful definition because it honors the idea that, of, like, whatever you wanna call it, primacy or whatever, they were there first. It honors the fact that they bring a different culture and a different value system maybe sometimes. So I think that was really great. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Now that we're on the same page about that definition for listeners, why did you choose to work with this population? Because you're Cape Verdean,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
Yep, yep. I'm from
And
Massachusetts, from
there are
a
also
city.
I've never heard of Cape Verdeans until I moved to Connecticut,
Uh-huh.
and then I realized they live all over there.
Yeah, so the Cape Verde Islands or Cabo Verde, which is a green place. It's not a cape, it's a series of islands, but you know how anglicizing goes and why people have weird last names and they're like, yeah, that's not what our last name was. They are uh islands off of the west coast of Africa. So if you find the map, you look at like Senegal and Ghana and stuff like that and just kind of go out, you just see like little specks. They were to the best of my knowledge, uninhabited until the Portuguese slave traders brought African people from the mainland to these islands to set up a way station as part of the Middle
Mm,
Passage. And so you would go to stop in Cape
jeez.
Verde, get the things you needed to make the long and dangerous passage to the Americas. And so that's our people. We are descended from that. And so I've been to Cape Verde. I've seen the slave um, shanties, if you will, that people
Yeah.
still live in today, and that is it's crazy. Not all over, not everywhere, but if you go to Cidade Valia, which is the old city, you can see where this is where the men
Wow.
stayed, this is where the women stayed, and they were separated so that the slavers could do what slavers would do. And so that's where we come from, the mixing of cultures, and so our language is we call it Crioulo. It's a Creole of Portuguese and West African dialects, and the largest group of Cape Verdeans in the world, more than in Cape Verde, are in New England. Um, Brockton, Massachusetts, is like I would say people may not agree. It is like the epicenter of that. So, but people will usually say the Boston and Providence corridor, and so like there are Cape Verdeans in Connecticut and Mass and Rhode Island.
Yeah.
There are also Cape Verdeans in Canton, Ohio, which I believe is comes from the fact that so many of us were whalers, and
Oh,
so I
okay.
believe in Canton there's a shipbuilding industry, and so there's this thread of like Cape Verdeans that like moved from the being on the boats to building boats. All right, so I don't know all of
Wow.
that, but there's also
You know a lot.
a big population in like Amsterdam, Holland. They call it Hollanda or whatever. Cape Verdeans do. But yeah, so that's where I'm from. I grew up in Brockton, in the epicenter. So I joke with people sometimes when they're like, "Oh, I was born in Cape Verde and Praia. I was born in Cape Verde and this island." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was born in Cape Verde and Brockton," and they'll die. They'll die because they go, "Yeah, yeah, there's mad Cape
An
Verdeans there."
extension. It's an extension.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a New Englander. I'm a city boy. At least that's what I thought. Um, all growing up, I went to Northeastern University in Boston. And so about 4 years after graduation, that's like what, 2008, 2009, if you recall that the economy wasn't booming.
Right.
And, I hadn't really found my place and was looking for a reset. My mom encouraged me like, like whatever you're doing here, you can do in California or Virginia. Your grandfather's in Virginia, your uncle's in California. Why don't you, look for something different?
Yeah.
All things being equal now, I wish well, not I wish. I wonder would have been different if I went to Virginia to be with my
Mhm.
grandfather, because I love my grandfather. My grandfather was one of my best friends. He just passed in October. Would have been a
Oh,
different life. However, I had been to Virginia tons of times. Never lived there, but I had been there. I had never been to Cali. So I called my Uncle Jay and I'm like, could I come live with you guys and figure out what I'm trying to do with my life? I have this degree. I'm not really loving business.
yeah.
There's got to be something else for me. And he was like, bet. Like my cousin Scott was graduating to go to high school and going to UC Riverside. So he was like, you could stay at
You
Scott's
got a
room.
room.
Bam. So I go out there. I ended up working at Enterprise Rent a Car, which
Okay.
it's a great company to work for, but it was more of like, it still didn't fit me, right? Like great company, great culture. Like, so it's not a rejection of Enterprise. It just like what I was beginning to realize then that I hadn't put words to was like, I loved working with kids. I loved being a big brother. When I was in Boston, I had two brothers that I was a big brother to. The funny
Okay.
part of that was they matched me with Richard. They matched this other guy with Elijah. They were Haitian kids. Their mom is one of the most amazing people, beautiful, beautiful people. Just like you should call. I would come over. She'd call me baby. Hello, baby. Come in. Let me. And she would try to feed me before I took them out. Like she was amazing. And I was like amped. Like great. I have a little. Whatever reason, this dude was not feeling it. He was a white kid, and that's not a bad thing. But he was not relating. So like he came that one time and never showed up again. And
Oh.
so, excuse me. One of the times, I think I don't know if it was Farah or if it was Richard. So it was the mom or my little brother was like, "Can Elijah come?" I was like, "Yeah, bet he can come." And so for the remainder of the years that I was their active big brother, I just had the both of them, and
That's sweet.
I loved them. I remember there are moments that I remember having them in the car. I had my car and I had the two of them and my niece and nephew, and they're like singing songs and like all that. And so I loved that. I loved at Northeastern, the Concerned Black Men of Massachusetts ran the Saturday school. They called it the Paul Robeson Institute for
Okay.
Positive Self-Development. And so we brought Black and Latinos from boys from the Boston public schools in, and we would do math tutorials and reading stuff and teach them principles. So they learned the principle, what people would call the principles of Kwanzaa were our core values. And so they
Mhm.
learned those terms, self-determination, creativity, collective work and responsibility. Like we taught that. So I'm like living in California, working for Enterprise by day, but being like, how do I work with kids again? And so I looked into doing USC's MAT program, but it was like 50 grand or something like that back. It's probably like 100 grand now, because everything is going up. But and 08, 09, it was like 50 grand. I'm like, I don't make 50 grand. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And I don't know if teachers make 50 grand. So do this program and I'm going to be in debt. And so around that time, I met this phenomenal, phenomenal woman. She was a teacher, classically trained special educator. And we meet and she's like, you don't seem really happy with what you're doing. But she's talking with me and she's like, you like have all these big ideas about life and the world and stuff. She's like, you could be a lawyer, you could be a teacher, like you could do anything. Like, what you trying to do with yourself? And so around that time, my best friend from high school, reaches out and I'm doing Teach for America. I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't know what that is, but I'm not doing that. Like, I'm gonna go to somebody else's community and teach the kids like I know something. But then this woman kept pushing me to like, you have more in you. And Chad kept
Mhm.
telling me, oh, you should do it. You should do it with me. And he showed me his materials because he got in and he was sent to Jacksonville, Florida. He was going to be sent to Jacksonville, Florida. He showed me the materials and I'm like, all right, they're not just dropping this cat in the middle of Jacksonville. They like actually have a plan to develop him. All right, let me check it out. Long story short, um, I applied. I had also gotten saved. So I grew up Catholic and then I kind of was
Oh.
a lapsed person. I grew up going to church every Sunday. I wasn't going to church. So then I ended up renting a car to this guy whose car had gotten hit by a tractor trailer. And then his rental car had gotten hit by a tractor trailer. So they were like, yo, he did not have a great experience. Can you just, take him and just feel him out? Because that was my thing. I was never going to push you to buy insurance, but
Yeah.
you would walk away. I would always get a high rating. Oh, he was the best. And he was so helpful. So I take this guy, Jeff, to drive him home after his rental's over. And we pull up to the church and I'm like, this dude lives at a church. And he was the coolest dude too. I'm like, man, we're talking about MMA, wrestling, all this stuff. I'm like, this guy's cool, but he lives at a church. What? And then he's like, oh, and by the way, I'm the pastor here. And I would love to,
Wow.
invite you to church sometime. So that's part of the story. So I start going to Pastor Craig's church. I get saved. I'm going. I apply for Teach for America. I meet missionaries, and I'm like, wow, missionaries, they still do that? Like, only thing I know about missionaries, missionaries used to go to reservations. That's history. And then I get into
Mhm.
Teach for America, and they invite me to go to South Dakota. And I'm like, yo, it feels like, well, actually, I read the materials on South Dakota, and I'm like, first, I'm like, what the hell is in South Dakota other than Mount Rushmore? Ain't a damn thing in South Dakota. And then the first paragraph says all the teachers in the South Dakota Corps are placed in reservations. And then my brain goes back to that moment in church where I made that connection. I'm like, that was a random thought for a person who's never been on a reservation. And it just felt like, that thing where they say, what do they say? Miracles happen every day. You just call them coincidences. I wasn't seeing that as a coincidence. I felt like God was putting breadcrumbs down. So then that's when I was like, I want to go to South Dakota. But by then, the amazing, phenomenal woman that that had encouraged me, I really liked her. And I'm like, all right, well, I would like her to come with me because I don't want this to end. We've only been talking together for a few months. I can't go to South Dakota. She ain't going to quit her job in LAUSD to go to this random state in the middle of the country. So I put South Dakota low on my list, but in my heart, I'm praying for it. I'm like, God, if I put South Dakota way down there and you still give it to me, it means it was meant to be.
Yeah,
And
you should
so,
be there.
long story short, I get into the Corps. I'm invited to South Dakota. I asked the woman to go with me. She says no. And my dad's advice is, well, you don't beg a woman, because he's old school. And I was like, you know what, Dad, he's usually right, but she's special. So I asked her again. And I think my persistence convinced her that I was serious about her coming with me. So she said she would go. So then I proposed to her. And so we like met in October. We started like seeing each other in December, and I proposed to her like in May. We got married in July, and then the
Wow.
next thing you know, we have a truck packed and we go to South Dakota. And so that's how I started interacting with Native peoples, Indigenous people. And so a couple of things that I learned right off the bat, or I look back and they're like clearly evident to me, is as much as I had lived in a Cape Verdean enclave, if you will, of Brockton, a lot of people of color, a lot of Cape Verdeans, a lot of Haitians, and other people as well. But like that was like where I lived. It was Cape Verdeans and Haitians a lot. I went to school in super diverse schools, so Portuguese, Cape Verdeans, Haitians, Irish, all that. Um, I had never been in a place where like the leadership was black or brown. So I get to the
Mm.
res, and I had in the high school that I taught at, which was Little Wound School, named after Chief Little Wound. We had two principals for the high school. It was just like a co-leader model. One of my principals was a white guy named Perry Hansen. He was dope. He ended up becoming a good mentor to me in my second year, especially. And his counterpart was Linda Ehring, Native woman. Our superintendent, Dr. Hunter, Native woman. The president of the tribe, Native man. And interestingly enough, he was a father of one of my math students. So I had to have parent conferences with the president. That was some stuff. But like growing, like living, not really coming of age, because by then I'm like, 27 or whatever it was. But like coming into my second, like kind of like level, right? Like you first maybe level up is becoming a young adult, teenager, 20s. But then like the next level up, because now I'm like married and thinking about having kids. And I'm like surrounded. Not all the teachers were Native, but a lot of the leaders were Native, and some of the teachers were. And it was just like, wow. I'm living in a rural place. So number one, I had never been in a rural place. I'm on tribal lands. So now there's a different form of government. We got a brown leader, got brown super, brown principal. And I'm a brown guy, right? I identify as black, but my hue, would be in the brown part of the crayon box.
My hue is crazy.
Right. And so so I was like, this is the first time. Like I didn't grow up in Atlanta. Like, right?
Yeah,
Like, so I didn't grow up in a place where like I just saw black excellence or brown excellence and was like, yo, this is normal. I was like,
it
so
is mind blowing when
yeah,
you see it and you're like, "Oh, this is the norm?"
right. It's crazy. I mean, like way jumping forward, way later, I would go to Atlanta and visit a school that was led by a black woman. And literally, I think 9 out of 10 faculty members were doctors. And like the only, or maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was like 29 out of 30, whatever it was. There was like one white male teacher that was the music teacher. He did not have the PhD. Everybody else was doctor, doctor, doctor. And I was now at that point, I'm in my 30s. And it was like another, like, but the
Yeah.
first wide open jaw drop moment was like, wow, I live in a place where the leadership looks kind of like me. And so that was really transformative. And then, this is the difficult part of the story. So this is, especially for women, moms that may have had difficulty with pregnancy. This will be resonant and maybe hard to hear, but we got pregnant. That's a very generous we. She got pregnant. I mean, I was part of the process, but
You helped
like
out. I mean, you lent a hand.
I lent a hand, but she was doing the heavy lifting. She got pregnant, and we ended up she lost a baby. We had a miscarriage. And in a lot of parts of this country, those things are quiet. They're held close. And you suffer quietly alone. I think it's probably why we have so much postpartum challenges, they endure because there's like almost like a quiet shame that people carry as they struggle because we don't create the forum for women to talk
Mhm.
about things like that, whether the baby survives or doesn't. In this case, the baby didn't. And I remember Dr. Earring offered to send us home. It was December 1st. So she's offered to send us home early for Christmas. Like, she's like, if you guys want to go home, we'll send you home. And we were like, nah, like we go home, we're gonna be miserable because everybody's gonna be crying around. She's
Everybody
like,
be
we're gonna
asking
go home
questions.
soon enough anyway. Let us just stay here. And when I tell you that my students were like gentle, like my students, they were amazing, but they used to tease me, and because on the res, like they crack, like we do, like black folks, where we do the dozens or like yo mama stuff. Native people do that. There's a part of the humor which is just like if we love you and we like you, we tease you,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
so that resonated,
You
and
gotta get
so
roasted.
yeah, you're gonna
Hard
get
up.
roasted. And they do say roasted, like, oh, roasted. Like so like they would normally roast you. They were like so loving, so caring. And like all
Oh,
these moms that worked on staff that were like principals and teachers as my wife's boss, you know what I mean? Like they were like, you know, I had that. I had multiple. I had this. I had, and so people were coming out. And I remember this woman, Norma Brownbull, who, I mean, she's like my wife's sister now. Her husband, Doogie, Daryl Doogie Brownbull, is my brother. Like I had their daughter, I had their nieces, I had their nephew, their granddaughter is like my Hunka daughter. Like she adopted me as her second father. Like we're really close to
oh,
them now. But what really like connected us was I remember we were in the house before we had returned to school. We got a knock on the door and it's Norma and her baby. She's like in elementary, but that was her baby, her youngest, Miracle. And she comes in and she's visiting with us. She brought us a little gift and she's explaining the significance of the images in the gift. They're like colors, like the yellow is the color for in their tribe is the color of the Wakanesha, is the word for children, the sacred beings, Wakanesha. And so there was a little yellow flower in there and all this different stuff. And she explained to us how, her daughter, she named her baby Miracle because the doctors had told her she would never have her or she would never have
mm,
another child. And like that was just like one of many stories of how the community rallied around us. Even we're not tribal members. We're not from there. They didn't have to do it that, but like to them it was just like obvious. This is community. They teach our
yeah,
children. They're part of our community, part of our, Tioshpaya, our extended family. And so that's really like, I know it's a long winded way of getting to it, but that's when I realized that this was going to be a part of my life's work one way or the other. Right. It was
yeah,
like, they didn't like qualify like, oh, we could help them, but they're not tribal members. So never mind. They
yeah,
just were like, they're part of our community. And so for
yeah,
me to, build my career starting on the res and seeing the need and eventually growing that understanding to be like, it is a need in a lot of tribal communities, but it's also a need in rural communities. To me, it just was obvious. Like, I may not be like rural born and bred. I may not be indigenous, but these communities, these rural and indigenous communities, every opportunity to wrap around me and my family and support us and love us and treat us like part of it, they have done that. And so to me, it just made sense. Like there's a lot of stuff that moves me in my own community. Like I'm a big supporter of Black women, especially Black women entrepreneurs. I think it's important that we support Black women and all women entrepreneurs. By the way, my first web designer and the person who did my brand book was a young white woman. The women who did my
mhm,
most updated website, they're Black women. Like every chance I get, if I can hire a woman, I do because I think it's so important. Um, but like it really, that's like a set of values of living into my values that I learned on the res. Like you're here, you're
yeah,
our community, you're part of our extended family. We care for you, and so to me, that's something that like it's always in my work. So even as much as I care about my Cape Verdean community, my Black community, and I want to see us win, I want to see like that I want all Black to, all Black everything, Black people winning is important to me, and I want rural people to win. I
yeah,
want Native people to win. Not win like it's a battle with, well,
yeah.
who's going to lose. It's not like about a zero something. It's just, I mean, like win, like what are your
Be able
goals?
to
What's your values?
participate,
What's
be
your
able to
dreams? Yeah. How do we
yeah,
help you get there? So that's what it really became. And I don't know, I'm excited about it. It fires me up. I think like from a business perspective, like it's blue ocean, right? Like a lot of people aren't talking about rural. So like I'm not like when people reach out to me, I'm not proposing against like the TNTPs or the
Mhm.
transcendence of the, and I love TNTP. That's another part of my story. TNTP invested in me in a bridge fellowship that got me to launch this. But I'm not
Yeah.
like competing like, oh man, TNTP got like, whatever, 300 people, like, great expertise. Like TNTP does do some work in rural countries, communities, and it's really good work. And so does Transcend. But like the majority of their focus in it isn't where the majority of kids are rural. I mean, excuse me, urban. So like rural is blue ocean. I'm
Yeah.
able to play in a space where I'm not in competition. I'm like, come on out. There's a lot of work
Yeah.
to be done. Like by people, the majority of our country is on our coastlines, but by landmass, the majority of our country is rural. And so they
Yeah.
might be smaller schools, but there are tons and tons of schools and classrooms that are just as deserving of leadership coaching and support and resources and connections as those other communities. And so from a business sustainability and entrepreneurship perspective, it just makes sense. I found blue ocean territory, but it wasn't really about that. It was just like this community showed me love at the moment when we needed it the most
Yeah.
without
There was just a natural
precondition.
connection. And that's the best connection. So, um, it's interesting because it sounds like the indigenous space is definitely, like, familial, like, definitely centered in family, and I noticed that when I was teaching in Harlem. My students were most of them were first generation West African or South American or Central American. So I had tons of, kids that spoke English, slang, telling me about the next thing. They told me about TikTok. And that's when I decided it was not for me because it's no way that these 9-year-olds are putting me on to something and I'm going to join it. So I was very confused to find out that adults were on TikTok later on. But their parents, were not all speaking English, had all left some either crazy situation or a lot of my kids' families, you know, were driving taxis like all day in New York. And I think having that context didn't lower my bar, but it adjusted how I interacted with those families. And I think sometimes when you go into certain environments, educators come in with whatever mindset you come in with. It doesn't really matter. You need to like have a blank slate because every community is different. Mind you, same network of schools. We had an Upper West Side school. It was mostly white kids and they have a whole different subset of cultures. Like it's helicopter parents out there like you can't punish my child, you can't do this, you can't do that with my child. Completely different cultures. But I really leaned heavily into leveraging my parents. Like if a parent told me so and so's karate teacher was the person, I'm like, cool, give me sensei's number.
Right.
Let's get it. 'Cause I know you work all day and I'm not gonna harass you. Because I recognize the need. Okay, dad is really the person in charge, but he's driving a taxi till midnight. So how can I figure out how to get my message across while being respectful of the boundaries that need to be set? I'm trying to figure out when you are going into the education space in an indigenous community, what are some of the things that you think some people may have misconceptions about or need to consider going into that space so that they are actually helpful
Mm,
versus creating more chaos?
yeah. I think so. First of all, just appreciating everything you just said. A lot of that resonates with me. Just the idea of like recognizing that each community, they have so much value and they have um, goals and dreams and hopes for their kids. And so
Mhm.
the quicker we're able to connect and communicate with them, the better we're able to like move in those spaces. So I agree with that. And it's just kind of the same thing on the reservation or the res. Some things I think that are important to know. I think that folks from off the res may have misconceptions. So number one, there are a lot more indigenous people or Native Americans still living, whatever you want to, whatever term, uh, Indian people, as a lot of Native people might even say of themselves. There are a lot more of them still alive and thriving in this country than we think, right? Like black folks in America, the way that, and I'm not trying to make this into a conversation about white supremacy, but white supremacy works to other us and make it very apparent, right? Like the one drop rule was like, if you didn't have one, long ago black relative, you're black, right? It's like the perpetual othering. With Native people, it's like erasure, right? Like that's what, so it's
Mhm.
interesting because for us, it was one drop of blood, right? It was blood. For Native people, it's blood quantum, right? And so like you need to have enough blood to qualify, right? And that's not necessarily always from the Native communities themselves, but like heavily rooted in white supremacy. So they could determine who was Native enough, right? Because of these treaty responsibilities. They don't want to fulfill the treaties, right? White supremacy
Mm,
doesn't. I would like to assume that our government, at its best, does want to honor it, but white supremacy does not. And so there are a lot of harmful
mhm,
ways that people talk about Native people, like, oh, they all got casinos and they got all this casino money and they go to college for free and they get free healthcare and da 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 da. And so, like, almost like they're getting something over on. They want to turn America's treaty responsibilities into just another entitlement program to like then
mhm,
justify that Native people are lazy and undeserving. And so the reality is there are tribal communities that have very successful casinos. Not all, and probably not even most, but there are some. Many tribal communities, yeah, you're entitled to IHS, which is the Indian Health Service, but there's not a white supremacist or white Christian nationalist alive who would trade their health insurance for IHS. I can guarantee you that. Or there's a history of forced, what do you call it? Sterilization, like just all kinds of horrible things. And then even when in today's world, if we want to assume that all of the doctors in IHS are doing the best they can, they're under resourced, they're under supported. So like this idea that Native people are sitting around getting the best and just taking it for granted, it's not true. Um, as it relates specifically to education, though, the other part that I think is important is that folks think like the boarding school era was like ancient history,
mhm,
like 1700s or something like that. And the reality is, we might be getting towards the latter end of it in terms of our elders, but there are people alive today, probably older folks, who went to boarding schools, like where like and like the old school way. Like there are still boarding schools, many of which have like embraced indigenous culture and have changed their ways. They're not punishing kids for using their language or cutting boys' hair, and ideally not losing Native kids, right? Because that's where the Truth and Reconciliation work in Canada and hopefully soon in the United States is going, is where they're finding the unmarked graves of Indian students or Native students that families never found out what happened, right? Like that's not happening in boarding schools today, by thank God. And so I'm not talking about those boarding schools, but I'm talking about people who are alive today, grandmas and grandpas who went to those schools that we are afraid of, where they did get
and just to be clear, English, please, the boarding schools, because some people are probably thinking like Choate in Connecticut. They're
no,
like,
no,
"What's the
no.
problem with a boarding school? I mean, I thought
So
these were nice."
on
What do
try
you mean?
yeah, yeah. So there was a system of boarding schools in this country where Native students were taken by force sometimes from their families and moved hundreds of miles away, sometimes by wagon, to schools where their parents were not being invited for parent-teacher conferences. They had no purpose. They might have visits, but they had no purpose to be engaged with the school. In many of these places, some of which were run under the auspices of churches, students were
Mhm,
beaten and punished for using their language. They had their mouths literally washed out with soap in some of these places. Their hair was cut. There are stories of kids being forced to kneel to pray, quote unquote, on broomsticks. And they're kneeling on broomsticks as punishment. And they're taught that their history, that their culture, that their language was terrible. The statement "Kill the Indian, save the man" emerged from a speech by the superintendent of the Carlisle Indian School. This was a celebration of their learning model. And it was
mm,
what became the foundation of the learning model for many of these boarding schools. So
yeah,
these were not, so the first education system in the United States that was built for people of color was not built to further their education or prepare them for jobs of the future to get them into
yeah, it
college.
was all
It was about
assimilation.
assimilation. And so when you think about schools now, right, that are not built in that kill the Indian, save the man
Yeah,
philosophy, you have schools that are dealing with sometimes chronic absenteeism, or you're dealing with a lack of parent engagement. And some of that is, sure, some parents aren't valuing education, right? There's always some people who are like that, or there are some people who would just say, hey, we're going to just miss school. But I would say that by and large, there is um, a disconnect from school because we've not healed those wounds. We've not
yeah,
like uh made a concerted effort to like engage families, redress those wounds and say, no, no, we want you involved. Right. There is a
yeah,
role for you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I've seen this in non-native schools, right? Like I worked in schools where there are a large, immigrant populations, families who speak Spanish, for example, and a little mom, a Guatemalan mom, for example, will show up to school and she's trying to communicate, and people, instead of like getting translated, they're yelling it louder and louder, right? Like because ignorantly they're like, you need to understand me, right? And like And if you're
That's
like
not how it works.
this woman or father navigating a new country and a new system, and you're being yelled at in a language you don't understand, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to stay out, and my kid speaks English. They can communicate to me, and so it's an unintended way that we
Yeah,
send a message that you're not welcome here. Like that's not. I hope that's not what that school leader is trying to communicate, but it's what comes through.
but it's what they're doing,
Right.
yeah.
And so
The
you
lack
have
of
that
compassion.
you have that same kind of incidents in Indian country a lot of times where parents are not engaging because then like the first response is like your kid's not showing up and da 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 da. And maybe that's the
Ask
passion.
them questions.
Yeah. Right. But that's your passion coming over. It's overflowing, but it's like it's creating a boundary. How do we reset? How do we engage families and start with assets like, hey, Brit's doing great in my class. When she's here, she's doing awesome. How do we get her here
Yeah.
more often? Da 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 da. Like the thing that my wife and I and some of our colleagues stumbled upon, like we didn't do it on purpose. Like I love to be like, yeah, yo, we figured it out from day one. But like when we started school, you know, in South Dakota, they start early. In a lot of rural communities, they do start early in August. I'm like, I grew up in the post Labor Day
No,
era.
I've never
Like
seen no post Labor Day in my
we
life, and
never went to school
I'm
before
like,
Labor
"Y'all
Day.
gotta be the laziest group of people starting after."
Nah, yo, give me that. I mean, what's the point of going to school on a Thursday or Friday and then you're gonna get a 3-day weekend? Like we just started. So I love that. But you know, you go to the res, you already been in school a month by Labor Day. So anyway, we get started in August, and I remember my kids being like, "Oh, we got a football game on Fri" I'm like, "Already? Dang. Oh, when did you have preseason?" And they're like,
Go
"Yeah,
time.
we have a game." And we were on the Pine Ridge reservation, but the game was in Pine Ridge, which is also a town. So we're in Kyle, and I don't know where the heck Pine Ridge really is. At that point, I'm like, "Okay." They're like, "Come to our game." And so we're like, "Okay, we live in a town of like 600 people. There ain't nothing else to do on Friday. Let's go to the game." So we drive to the game and we walk over to the visitor side, and our kids start looking back, right? And because a group of us came, we just loaded up car. And I remember our kids being like, "You came? Like, why did you come?" And we're like, "You asked us to." And they're like, "Yeah, we asked all our teachers, but they don't. We asked all the new teachers, but they never come." And like
Oh.
that, like for us, like going to the games, going to the powwow, going to the fair, going to whatever was happening, shopping where they, going to like Angels, which is like the little kind of like almost like or Kyle Grocery, which are kind of like bodegas basically. Like it's
Yeah,
called a grocery store, but it's like about the size of a bodega. And like shopping there and seeing kids and like we didn't do that because we had some like dope theory of action that like be in the community and then you be part of the community. We just was like okay, but it ended up being the cheat code. And
yeah,
so like like what I would say is going back to where I started, like a lot of the behaviors that you will observe in kids and families around school, they're learned, that we taught them those things.
yeah,
And so I would say that there are a lot of incredible Native educators, many of whom are also language warriors who have done a lot to address that, right? Like, so I'm talking about, 15 years ago, right? And a lot has changed. It's better now, but that's what I was learning is like folks are not disengaging from school because they just don't care about school. They don't feel welcomed at school, right? And so bridging that gap, being seen off campus, right? So then I have, like I said, the president of the tribe is coming to my parent teacher conferences, or this mom is coming to my teachers conferences, stuff like
yeah,
that. And so I think that what I would say is Native people have just as vibrant and diverse a set of dreams and visions for their kids as any other family. You just need to be able to like have the courage and the curiosity to ask them the questions and engage them in those conversations, and then the humility to
yeah,
wait and listen to the response and be okay with the fact that what they hope and dream might be a little bit different than what you had in mind. And then you got to be willing to like, okay, so if that's what you and your kid want, how do I incorporate that? How do I make that
yeah,
connection? How do I help you see, like for me, it was math. How do I help you see how math will help you get there? You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So I think that's what it is. It's just like, this is not an issue where like Native peoples are somehow deficient or it's intrinsic to them. They just don't care about education and betterment. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Okay, they want great things for their kids, but they have a lived history, not ancient
mhm,
history, but a lived history that suggests that school is not the place where that happens.
yeah,
So we are trying to like today, like the like amazing educator. I could list them like Sage Fast Dog, Dr. Rosemary Claremont. Um, you know, uh, I'm just on the spot right now, but like tons and tons of educators all over the country in rural and indigenous spaces who are trying to reimagine school and do school differently, so that kids and families feel connected. So that's what I think people need to know is like people they care deeply. They want great things for their kids. But you need to build a bridge so that they can engage. The other thing I think I would say is that like you still have elders who know their culture, know their history, know their language, are like, and just like the West Indian or West African families that you're talking about, that like have like a lot of cultural wealth and like they know where their kids are coming from. That like if you were like, hey, I'm teaching math, I'm doing ELA, I'm doing science, help me understand how I can incorporate West Indian teachings or African
Yeah.
teachings or like Mexican cultural teachings, so that I can help my students connect. There are native folks who can do that as well. Like there are folks who can teach you star knowledge so that you can connect it to science, or that can show you
Mm,
how there's numeracy or numerology, whatever we want to say in native culture. So like things like me learning that fours and sevens are significant
mm,
in the Lakota culture. Just like seven is a number of completion in the Bible, right? So like there are like these connections, right? Like, and Christianity hadn't reached yet. So how do we both arrive at the same number as being significant? You know, things like that. That like I had to learn so then I could go back in the classroom and make a connection. I'll tell you the story about that guy Sage I mentioned, about how he had a kid who could not figure out the parts of the cell. It just kept slipping. He didn't have a schema. And so, but
what is it,
Sage,
mitochondria?
yeah, like mitochondria and the cell wall and the membrane and all this stuff. And but Sage knew that the kid he walked the traditional path, and he did ceremony, he kept ceremonies. So Sage was like, he drew the picture and he goes, "What does this remind you of?" And the kid's like, "I don't know." He goes, "Doesn't it look like the Sundance ground?" And the kid's, "Oh yeah, kinda." He goes, "So who's this?" And the kid would say, "Oh, that's this person, or that's this function." And he goes, "Well, that's the cell membrane, or that's the this, and
Mm,
that's." All of a sudden, that kid passed the cell, the parts of the
yeah,
cell well quiz. And so I think that's the thing we need to understand, is that like native kids, like black kids, like, you know, Latinos or like Asian, like what, they're not deficient, they're not dumb. They have a whole set of background knowledge and schema. And if you can understand how to tag into it, they
yeah,
can memorize some stuff. And ideally, we can take them beyond memory to like actual deeper level learning, and they can create knowledge. You know, I'll
yeah,
just say this. I went to Mexico one time for a wedding, and I did an excursion, and we went to like the Mayan pyramids. So we went to like where Kukulkan was. And this was after I saw Wakanda Forever. So I was amped. And so we like subversively we were a group of black folks. We did a picture like this in front of the pyramid, like, yeah, Wakanda Forever. But like low key, they were teaching us how the Mayans were tracking the lunar and stellar movements in like basically they to me they look like bird baths. And like you
mm,
got to think about the level of scientific knowledge and understanding to create a, a table of water where you could track day by day. That's how they built the Mayan calendar and tracked
yeah,
movement. You know, how many years it took us to figure out it was 365 and a quarter days. The Mayans were already knowing that. And so I remember leaving that going, yo, if every Mexican American kid knew how dope their ancestors were, you couldn't tell them nothing. And I think that
yeah,
applies to native kids. That applies to every kid, black kid, white kid. As we know who we are and what we come from, you can't discourage me. You can't tell me I can't be a scientist. You can't tell
yeah.
me I can't be an entrepreneur. You can't tell me I can't be an animator. I can't be a basketball player. I can't be whatever it is that I want to be, because my ancestors were dope. And so I think
Did a lot with less.
that's what I think people need to understand about Native kids, that they do. As much as we as a nation have tried to erase Native histories, it is there. And the more that Native kids learn their language, their culture, and their history, they will thrive, and they will exceed our highest expectations. Sorry, that was a mad long answer.
No, it's okay. I think what I grasped from it though was, I started thinking like, man, that is what you said. There is an essence of what you said that actually is kind of the bigger point, which is to be a successful educator, you have to be willing to be learning too. And that was a mistake that I made my first several years of teaching and or even just being in education, because I started out in administration, then I became a teacher, went back to administration, but working in a classroom, I learned a lot about my gaps because I had a very author I cannot say this word, authoritarian mother.
Mm, you got it.
It was my way or the highway, right? And I stayed on a straight and narrow as a result. So in my mind, that's the way to go. Well, what I wasn't doing was trying to like understand where they were coming from or see it from their point of view, and working with their parent, getting closer to their parents, like you said, unlocked a few things because there was an assumption I was making that if this kid is misbehaving, it's because the parents don't hold them accountable. Like I had this whole mindset about how this goes. Like, I know how this goes, and it's sad because I had beliefs about my black and brown students that were put on me, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. Like, I shouldn't be blown away that my students are achieving something that historically was not happening, but I was blown away, and then it was kinda like, "Ooh, this is a me problem."
Mm,
Like, my mindset is wrong, and I think there's this assumption that, like, because you're of color and you're working with students of color, that you're naturally just gonna get it right away and it's gonna click. And it's like, no, it's a human thing. Like, from a human to a human, I can't come in as an educator and say, well, I sat in classrooms that taught me how to teach, and I went through workshops that taught me how to teach, so I'm good to go. No, 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 no. You're not gonna get good at teaching for years because every classroom's not the same. Every student that looks the same ain't the same, and your experience is not gonna be their experience. But more importantly, you have so much to learn. And when I started to adopt that mindset of like, Imma let y'all talk. Why don't you tell me? When I started to have more conversations with my classroom about things, instead of just saying, "This is the punishment and this is why," I was like, "Listen, y'all, let's get in the huddle." I used to be I used to do this a lot. "Everybody, let's get in a circle. Somebody close the door because I don't like, I need us to lock in here. This is what happened. This is how it made me feel. This is what's going through my mind right now. And this is the punishment that I'm thinking of. Why don't y'all help me help you help me?" And what came of that, honestly, over time, because I was so candid as a teacher, they were candid with me. They're like, "Well, Miss Hunter, you talking out of both sides of your mouth, actually, because you said this and then you did this over here." So, and it's like, dang, you're not wrong. And it forced me to do things like apologize to my kids. It forced me to retract things. It forced me to undo punishments that I did. It forced me to just be human. And I hear that in what you're saying is like, the kids are not doing things because they're hoodlums or heathens. They're doing things because they're kids, but they're also responding to you.
mhm,
You set the tone of the classroom. And if you're not curious, why would they be? If you're not asking them questions, why would they be patient with you? If you're not patient with their families, if you're not talking to their parents with respect, why should they talk to their parents with respect or talk to you? And it's just like,
right.
dang, I need them to mirror me.
Yeah.
And there's always a good litmus test too. I feel like I had a I think I really clocked it one time where, I think I was, like, trying this thing where I was letting the kids teach the class. I was like, "Alright, I gotta get them talking more, so Imma let this person explain their work. I'm not gonna ask any questions." They have heard me ask questions, they know where the story goes, and one of the girls, Jaylee, gets up, and she's leading the class through her work, and she's, like, checking people as she's going, and she's like, "Oh, that I didn't, so you're not answering my question because that wasn't a question I asked, and you're not listening." And then she's going over here, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is me. She's being me." And the next kid came up, and they did their own variation of me, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is horrible." So, it like, teaching is just so magical in that if you really take the time to engross yourself in your students and your kids, like, you don't actually have to do so much work. You don't have to work as hard. I was working so hard my first few years, and then by my 3rd and 4th year, I was like, "Oh, I just gotta be cool with y'all and be candid, and I don't have to turn up so quickly."
Yeah.
So,
It's
um,
vulnerability, it's
yes.
openness, it's building a bridge, right, where they could feel like they can be real with you because you've been real with them. I mean, there's so much that we learn when we have the humility to, like, accept we don't
Gotta
have all
be
the
humble.
answers. We don't have I don't have all the
Like,
answers.
I messed that up. Yeah, I used to tell them like, and it sometimes took my leader to be like, we had a very strict don't blame kids rule. There was a very strict, don't even fix your mouth to say the kids didn't do this. If the kids didn't do it, it's because you didn't get them there. And so there had to come a time where like we were lowest in math, and I was like, all right, y'all, this is on me. It can't be on you because the classroom next door killed it. So the classroom next door teacher is gonna come in and start teaching y'all math for the next 3 weeks because I got to learn too. And it shifted everything. It was like, cool, we're all learning. It's not punitive anymore. She just says she don't know.
Mhm.
And so it would definitely was a lesson in humility of like, whew, this is on me. This is 100% on me. So this has been a great conversation. We didn't even get to the this or that unsolicited advice segment. That's okay. That's okay because I got a lot of content. I'm feeling
Okay.
good about this. So before we go though, I want to give you an opportunity to share, with whoever's listening. Tell us something you want us to leave with? Whether it's a call to action to your services, a call to action to visit certain places, what would you like to leave the audience with?
So yeah, first of all, like I would love for folks to connect. I'm building my network all the time. There's not enough.
Nice.
Uh, I don't have enough great people, and I don't think I ever have enough great people in my network. So you can visit our website, www.theliberinstitute.org. That's Liber Institute. You can also, probably the place where I'm most active, not probably, definitely, is on LinkedIn. You can just find me, Jonathan Santos Silva. It's spelled the biblical way, and Santos Silva is phonetic. And it'll probably be in the description for the podcast. I try to be active on LinkedIn and share, stories and inspiration for and about rural school leaders and superintendents. But I feel like there's a universality to it. Like it's just good leadership and good humanity. So definitely reach out to me, connect with me there. I accept the connections. I'm not like, I don't really know you. Like, nah, we can get to know each other. As far as a call to action, unsolicited advice, I don't know if it's advice so much as just the nuggets. So the first thing I'll say is that my mom always used to tell me, to whom much is given, much is required, which is a paraphrase of the Bible. And I think that to your listeners, when we look at our own lives, through a lens of gratitude and realize how blessed we are, it doesn't matter where we are in life or what station in life, we always have something that we could give. And so,
Yeah.
as more is given to us, whether that is the next open door or the job offer or the whatever, the speaking stage that you're invited to, how can you serve? And it doesn't have to be great to be service. It can be small things. And to my personal experience, it doesn't have to be that you only serve in the spaces where you look. That's my challenge to philanthropy. Not that you asked. The biggest disappointment I've had in philanthropy, other than just the whole like pullback that's going on now, as folks are trying to figure out the current administration and funding priorities, like that's very disheartening. Because we need
Mhm.
true co-conspirators, not allies. Allies, you can change an alliance, but a real co-conspirator is in with you. Their fingerprints are on everything. And to see the
Yeah.
number of philanthropists and philanthropic organizations that are revealing that there never were co-conspirators, they were in it while it was convenient, is disappointing. Because I really believed in some of these folks, and so that's the challenge. Like so much has been given to you, whether you are the millionaire or the billionaire, or you're in that seat. Whose names are you bringing into spaces? What projects are
Yeah.
you bringing? So that's number one. But the second thing I'm disappointed with philanthropy is that the number of times I've been pushed and challenged because as a Black man, I work in the rural and an indigenous space. Like it would be so
Mhm.
much easier for them, I think, if I would just be a Black guy doing Black people stuff. Like what the hell is Black people stuff?
Yeah.
White people get to be a hero in any community they want. That's historic. They've gotten to do it, whether what they were doing was actually helpful or harmful. And so the idea that I have to go through this extra layer of scrutiny is bogus. I think we need
Yeah.
to do more to support bridge building. So whether that is supporting teacher Hunter, Ms. Hunter in a community where she's working with West Indian and African and Latino kids, and that's not her background, or if it's me doing work in rural community, or if it's, whatever. I think we need to be more creative, right? If we're really trying to build an America and a world where like we're truly brothers and sisters and we're like wrapped up in each other's liberation, then it shouldn't matter. And so that
Yeah.
goes to that idea of like, don't be boxed in by what your identity is. Like find the places where you can leverage your gifts to bless other people and do it. Make a habit of blessing
Yeah.
people. My jiu-jitsu instructor says, I can have anything, and I don't think he created it. I can have anything I want in life if I help enough people get what they want in life. And so I believe that when you
Mhm.
bless people and you help them, then just through the process of putting more good in the world, good will happen for you. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think those are things I would talk about. Um, Another quick thing I'll say, like that's not really that poignant or powerful, but it also comes from my mom. My mom always said that my first passport was my library card, and I would tell people, get kids,
Listen, preach.
right, get kids
Don't
to
get me
read,
started.
get your kids reading. I know a mom who
Read,
had an
read, read.
awesome opportunity to go teach abroad, and then found out the restrictions on educating her own child in that space. And so what she
Mm.
did for the 2 years while she taught was she got her daughter every book she could get her hands on.
Yeah.
And that basically the little girl homeschooled herself. And by the time she got back to the US and tested in, she was in ninth grade and a 12th grade reading level. And her math was on point. Get kids reading. Let them
Yes.
read books written by people who are like them, written by people who are unlike them, people with stories about people who have lives that echo theirs, and people whose lives would challenge them to imagine a bigger world. Get kids to read. And
Absolutely.
you read, leader. Read, read, read.
Read,
Read
read, read.
fiction, read nonfiction. Read how to be better. in your work, read stuff that challenges you to imagine another world, right? Like read, Afrofuturism, read, great Black authors imagining Black characters in fantasy and in science fiction, but also read biographies and autobiographies. But read.
Yeah.
Like that has been the best part of my education as an adult. Has been my recommitment to my reading passion, audio books and all that. So that's the other thing I say that, like, just read, and get the kids that you love to read. Um, and then, so I talked about that we have people that are living that survived boarding schools. There are also, great Black people in our lives, Black elders who survived, the 60s and 70s.
A
They're
great
still living a
migration.
great migration. So like the idea that this stuff happened a long time ago, it is not true.
Yeah, it's
People are
very
living
recent.
with the memories. And so one of my elders, one of my OGs was a man named Ed, young man afraid of his horses. He was Lakota from Pine Ridge. And he taught me about walking with relatives, right? Like there's a phrase in the Lakota language, mitakoye o yasin, which is we're all related. It's a way that like a lot of the elders and the language keepers will like end a prayer or end a blessing
Mm,
or like a kind of like an address. And it's like we're
yeah,
all related. And this is talking about the land. It's talking about the animals, the four-legged, the two-legged, the winged. Um, we're all related. And so Ed taught me about walking with relatives. He would meet with me every day in my second hour, my prep,
mm,
and teach me. That's how I learned about the history of L&I. That's how I visited sacred sites. And I went to um, Bear Lodge and Bear Butte and all these places and others that have taken me to Wind Cave and all these places that were sacred to the Lakota so I could understand where I was in creation.
yeah,
But the idea goes beyond that. He didn't have to take that hour every day or 45 minutes to
yeah,
teach me. But for him, he saw me as a relative. And so that was his
yeah.
way of for whom much is given, much was required. And he gave and he gave and he gave. And there was no way I could ever pay him back. When we look at our students as our relatives, and we look at their families as our relatives, when we look at the people who voted differently than us as our relatives, when we look at the people, who look differently as our relatives, we move differently. And that's not just an indigenous concept, although it is. And I want to honor that I learned that on the res. I believe that's congruent with uh, teachings of Judaism, teachings of
Mhm.
Christianity, teachings of
Yeah,
Islam, teachings of Buddha. Because I know people who practice all those faiths. Like this is universal principle. If we could all get back to that root of our faith, and even like just secular humanism, like if you want to be a good human, if you look around and
yeah,
see people, like I know that in like the ethnic studies tradition down in the Southwest, they do that. Tu eres mi otro yo, like you're the other
yeah,
me. If we see people as our relatives or as our other self, it's a lot harder to hate and perseverate on hate and distance. And we start to work towards like unity. That's the unifying concept. So that's what I would say. Like honor Ed, honor your OGs, like walk as a relative. How can I serve? How can I support? How can I suspend my judgment and ask the questions like you did in the classroom? And get to a deeper understanding. I think if we all did that, if we did that more, we would be in such a better place, and our kids would be inheriting a much better world. So,
we'd be happier. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome. I'm gonna take all your links and make sure they're in the show notes. And yes, he's serious about following him and connecting with him on LinkedIn because that's where I found him. I came across his page and I was like, this is so dope and interesting. And I just want to learn more about it. And I've taken a lot of notes actually. So I got some people I need to reach out to because I am, like I said, I'm just a very curious person and I love to learn about things that are not like me at all, but are probably very similar to me. So thank you so much.
thank you.
I will be sure to upload this. And thank you for everybody who's watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow Jonathan on LinkedIn and learn more about his institute. Thanks so much.
Thank you.